Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to each of you for your willingness to serve and be here with us today. Mr. Rosner, let's start with you. The electric transmission is a hot topic. It's a hot topic here in Congress and a hot topic within FERC. Would you agree that the cost of transmission lines ought to be borne by and imposed only on those who directly and quantifiably benefit from those lines?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I agree that only those who benefit should pay for transmission, and that is consistent with longstanding commission precedent as well as judicial precedent on this topic.
Thank you. Now, Ms. C., states like California have adopted some of their own standards, their own renewable portfolio standards. And those require significant transmission infrastructure in order to wheel in renewable generation from other areas of the country. Should FERC require Utah's ratepayers to pay for California's future transmission projects, which will be built solely for the purpose of satisfying California's public policy goals?
Senator, I would certainly respect the responsibility of the states when it comes to their primary decisions and their own policies and generation. But when I'm looking at FERC's particular role, I agree with Mr. Rosner that there is longstanding commission precedent when it comes to the idea that costs need to be commensurate to the benefits. I think that's critically important. And in any of these issues that were coming in front of me, I would be looking at who is benefiting in that case when it comes to the particular issues of cost allocation. I would be looking very closely at the law and the commission's role in that area and applying it to the particular factors in front of me.
But the Commission's job is not to socialize the cost from one state to another in order to satisfy that state's policy desires. It's not the other state's job to pay for those. It's certainly not FERC's job to require State A to subsidize State B in its own policy preferences.
I think it's certainly important for the Commission to be looking at what it looks like to have fair allocation in terms of just and reasonable rates. And yes, I would be looking very closely at that statutory authority in any of these questions.
Ms. Chang, do you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. I also agree with the fact that beneficiaries pay in the context of transmission cost allocation. So, yes.
Great. Mr. Rosner, you agree with that also?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, clearly, the idea of beneficiary pays is easy to agree to in principle, but harder in the context of paying for specific transmission projects. So I'd urge each of you to be very careful as you navigate this issue of who pays. The who pays question is significant. The question about that you're not socializing the cost for transmission projects to ratepayers. It's an important thing for you to focus on. Ratepayers that will not benefit from those projects and didn't have a say in the climate policies that have been adopted in other states where the ratepayers in question do not live. Ms. Chang, in your view, is FERC fundamentally an economic or environmental regulator?
Economic regulator.
Mr. Rosner, do you agree with that?
I do.
And Ms. C?
Yes.
Mr. Rosner, federal courts have long recognized FERC as an agency with no inherent powers beyond those specifically granted by Congress. The D.C. Circuit held in Atlantic City Electric versus FERC that FERC is, quote, a creature of statute, one that has no constitutional or common law existence or authority, but only those authorities conferred on it by Congress. In your view, Mr. Rosner, should FERC be in the business of regulating environmental and climate impacts beyond what NEPA requires?
Thank you for the question, and I agree strongly that if honored to be confirmed, my starting point in considering questions that come before the Commission would be the statute. And I think in the case that you're mentioning here, that would be the Natural Gas Act. And I would look to the Natural Gas Act, and the text that the Supreme Court has said that the purpose of the Natural Gas Act is to ensure the orderly development of plentiful supplies of natural gas at reasonable price. And so that's where I would start and end in my analysis of that issue.
Thank you. Ms. Chang, is it appropriate under the law for FERC to regulate downstream emissions for a natural gas pipeline project?
My understanding is that the Natural Gas Act does not specify greenhouse gas emissions as a criteria for denying any pipeline projects.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one follow-up? Now, in a Citizens Climate Forum panel, you spoke about how climate transmission will reform, quote, really everything we do. The way we do things will need to change between now and 2050, beyond, of course. What role do you think FERC should play in the climate change transformation that you described in that speech?
In that context of the quote that you just cited, Senator, it's about our individual lives and, and our personal contribution to the climate crisis that we face. As far as FERC's role is concerned, if I have the honor to be confirmed, I will make sure that I follow the law, and Congress is in the position to set the law, and FERC is an agency that follows the law.
But should climate change factor into FERC's public interest determinations?
I understand your question, and I understand the tension around this topic. I am not a lawyer, so I haven't reviewed all the court cases around this topic, but I would commit to you and everyone here that
Based
I will
on your understanding of those laws, should it?
Again, I mentioned that the National Gas Act does not specify climate change in its determination of natural gas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to weigh in here with so many references to California. But first, I want to take a moment and